If you've ever heard of FIRE, the early retirement movement, you've probably wondered if it could work for you. On the surface, it makes sense. Save aggressively, hit a number, stop working. But here's what nobody in that conversation talks about. If you're earning 600,000, 800,000, $1 million a year with RSUs vesting quarterly, a tax bill that's already in six figures, that framework was not built for you. And applying it to your life either makes early retirement seem impossible or worse, has you planning for a future that you don't actually want to live. That's the trap of FIRE, financial independence, retire early. But there's a different framework that I've been using with executive clients for years. I call it FINE, financial independence, next endeavor. Not completely retire and stop working, and certainly not move somewhere inexpensive and disappear. FINE is about making work optional. So whatever comes next is completely your choice. That is a structurally different objective than FIRE, and it requires completely different planning decisions. At the core of FIRE is the 4%. Save 25 times your annual expenses, withdraw 4% a year. Done. So for someone living on $40,000 a year, the math is accumulate $1 million and you're free. It's clean, it's simple, and for the audience that it was designed for, it works. But run that same math for a high earner that's living on $200,000 to $400,000 a year. You're talking about a portfolio of $5 to $10 million accumulated while navigating a tax situation that the FIRE community has almost no playbook for. Here's where it breaks specifically. First, tax drag on accumulation at your income level. When you're earning $500,000 or more, the money you're trying to save is already running through a 40% or higher effective tax rate. Every employee stock purchase plan spread gets stacked on top of your salary, or deferred comp that's distributed in the wrong year can create a surprise tax bill that wipes out 2 to 3 years worth of efficient savings. The FIRE community optimizes around expense ratios and savings rates. Your situation is about coordinating equity events, timing income, and managing lifetime tax drag. Those are very different conversations, and the standard FIRE model does not address yours. Second is sequence of returns risk at scale. The 4% rule is a statistical model. When your portfolio is $1 million, a 20% drawdown in your first year of retirement is painful. When your portfolio is $5 million, that same drawdown is $1 million event. And if you're funding your entire lifestyle out of portfolio withdrawals, the FIRE model, you're selling into that downturn to pay your bills. That's forced selling at the worst possible time. And if you're a high earner, sequence risk isn't just a chart. It's a structural threat, and it requires a structural solution. We'll get into what that looks like. Third, and maybe the most obvious, is the lifestyle mismatch. FIRE frugality is a real strategy, and it works for the people it was designed for. But the life that it produces is not what most high earners actually want. If you've spent 20 plus years building a career, raising a family, and creating a life you're proud of, the idea that freedom means scaling that back to the bone doesn't land with the people that I work with. And it shouldn't. The goal isn't to spend less. The goal is to make sure the life you're spending on is the one that you actually designed, not one you drifted into, and not one that you're running from. And that requires a completely different framework. Quick pause here. If you want to see what work optional planning actually looks like for your specific situation, the same financial planning software we use at Tailored Wealth is available to you for free now. You can run your own scenarios and you can see what's actually possible and what the gaps are before you make any assumptions about your timeline. The link is in the description below. Now let me reframe the goal. The target isn't a date where you stop working. The target is a point where work is fully and completely a choice. Those two things sound similar, but they're not. When work is optional, you can still work. In fact, if you're like many clients of ours, you probably will for a while. But do it on your terms, at the intensity, the role, and the specific purpose that you choose. The anxiety that comes from a difficult quarter, a company that's headed in the wrong direction, or a boss that doesn't get it, well, that changes completely when you know you could walk away tomorrow and be fine. That's the whole point. And it's typically available years before you technically retire. That's a meaningful psychological shift that I've seen firsthand making meaningful difference in overall quality of life. So what does the architecture look like? I think about it in three layers. Layer one is near-term liquidity. This is your 2 to 3 year cash and short-term buffer. Its job is to make sure you never, under any market conditions, have to sell long-term investments to fund your current life. When markets drop 20%, and they will, this layer is what keeps you from locking in those losses. It's not just an emergency fund. It's your secrets of returns defense. For most high earners, this means 2 to 3 years of expenses sitting in short-term stable instruments. Layer two is your midterm income replacement. This is your 3 to 10 year layer. Its job is to give you the ability to replace one salary if you step back from full-time work. Think of this as your transition runway. Maybe you go fractional. Maybe you take a board seat or consulting work at 2 to 3 days a week. Maybe you take a year completely off and figure out what's next. This layer, invested in a moderate growth allocation, gives you the financial footing to make those decisions without pressure. This is what funds find. Layer three is long-term compounding. This is your 10-plus-year bucket. It stays fully invested in a growth allocation. It runs and you don't touch it because layers one and two have short and midterm covered. Market volatility doesn't force your hand because your short-term needs are pre-funded. Over time, this layer funds full retirement, legacy, and generational wealth conversations. And when all three layers are in place, you have what I call a work optional architecture. This is the core of what we call life-driven investing, building the portfolio backward from your life, not forward from a benchmark. Let me make this concrete. What does work optional actually look like for a high earner at different ages today? I'll walk you through three scenarios that are fairly common with what we see. First is work optional at age 45. Let's say you're earning somewhere between $400,000 and $600,000 today. You're somewhere between 35 and 38. So to have genuine work optionality at age 45, you have roughly a 10-year window. In that window, the portfolio needs to reach somewhere between $4 to $6 million in investable assets with the three-layered architecture in place. That is achievable at your income, but it requires a disciplined equity comp strategy, meaningful tax efficiency year over year, and retirement contributions that are sized to that outcome, not just maxing out the 401k and hoping the RSUs take care of the rest. The tax decisions in years 8 through 10 matter enormously. Roth conversion windows, timing equity events, structuring deferred comp distributions. Those decisions alone, made intentionally versus reactively, can amount to hundreds of thousands of dollars in lifetime tax drag. Work optional at age 45 can be real, but the window to build it closes faster than most people realize. Now let's look at a work optional at 50 scenario. You're earning between $600,000 to $800,000 today, and you're somewhere between 40 and 42. That 10-year window feels more comfortable, but it's not necessarily. At 50, you're likely looking at 30 plus years of portfolio longevity. That means that sequence risk is significantly magnified compared to someone that's retiring at age 65. You need that near-term liquidity layer fully funded before you step back. You also need clarity on healthcare, the single most underestimated cost in early work optional planning. At 50, if the portfolio is in the range of $3 to $5 million and equity comp has been managed well, work optional living is not theoretical. It's achievable with the right architecture in place and the right decisions made in the years leading up to it. Now let's do work optional at 55. This is the scenario where the math is most forgiving. And often, the emotional readiness is the harder challenge. At 55, with a well-managed portfolio and thoughtful tax strategy in place, traditional retirement accounts start to become accessible. And Social Security timing becomes a meaningful variable in this income plan, so the flexibility expands considerably. But the question I hear most often from people at this stage isn't, can I afford to step back? It's, what do I actually do next? That's where what I call hybrid retirement, optional, purpose-driven, flexible work often becomes the right framework. Not fire, not full stop, fine. Financial independence, next endeavor, on your terms. The math and the feasibility of your plan is dependent upon your expenses in addition to your portfolio value and tax situation. But this framework can and does hold up across all ages. The specifics just shift around it. Now, whether you're targeting age 45, 50, 55, or later, the path to leaving corporate is buildable. but only if the right decisions are getting made now. If you want to sit down and map out what your specific work optional number looks like, what the portfolio needs to be, what tax moves need to be made, and what the specific path forward looks like for your situation, that's exactly what a free wealth clarity chat with me and my team is designed to answer. The link is in the description. No pitch, just clarity on your numbers. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.